Assalamualaikum dan salam hormat. Bersama saya Dr. Aila Abdul Latif, anda sedang menonton VISI. Dalam memenuhi keperluan norma baharu, institusi pengajian tinggi terpaksa melalui banyak perubahan. Pensyarah kini kian mahir mengelola kelas online. Proses pembuatan keputusan juga dibuat secara online. Berubah bukannya mudah. Dalam episod kali ini, saya akan menemu ramah Profesor John Wilson, Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif dan Timbalan Naib Canselor Swinburne Universiti of Technology, Kuching, Sarawak. Welcome to the program, Prof.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, universities, colleges around the world, we have been heavily impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, but undoubtedly, the top priority is to provide educational continuity for the students to complete their degrees. Since the beginning of the MCO in mid-March, campuses have been empty as part of public health measure for the safety and well-being of the students, staff and community. What were the immediate responses to the changes in university due to the pandemic or MCO?
Thanks for the question. Certainly when COVID-19 struck and we had the movement control order put in place, we had to move very quickly to ensure, really the safety of our students and our staff and the whole of the Swinburne Sarawak community. So the most important thing for us was the safety side, and clearly under government directions we could not have students on campus. Yeah. But we didn't want to delay the students' study. That's the important part, is to keep that continuity of study for the students. Right. But we all had to work remotely, so we had a day's notice to sort of evacuate the campus basically and start to work from home. And thank goodness for modern digital technology, because that was really the big godsend for us, because that really provided the continuity we actually needed. So from a management point of view to start, we had our executive team and we met on a daily basis on Zoom or on MS Teams. And we probably met for about 2 hours at a time, right? Just around the table to ensure that we had continuity of every subject we were teaching in the university. And that was our main aim. It was quite challenging because, we went from really an on-campus, face-to-face environment to a online and in the home environment. So very, very different sort of scenario. And that's where we had to really work with all our academics, our professional staff team, to make sure that all those subjects could continue to be taught in a remote way, but also to make sure our business had continuity as well. So for us, working with the management team was really important. So we had that coordination. We did that on a daily basis. It was a matter of working with our academic team so that we had every subject being continuously taught. Yeah. We couldn't do that immediately. We had a 2-week pause in the semester while we got everything sorted out, and then we commenced. So that was our main aim, was really to keep the subjects moving. Yep. And that was really the part. So we did that, and we got through it. Thank goodness.
Yep. We are at that point and unexpectedly forced to de-densify the university campus, right, and promptly make transition to online learning. Is there any or some pushback at first?
Well, I think everyone actually adjusted really well. I mean, it was a great test of resilience for our students and for our staff and the whole team, the whole of the Swinburne Sarawak community. And that goes for all universities in this situation and all businesses. But we've got a very good learning management system for our students, and that's basically where the lecturers sort of put up all the material in a very orderly fashion in a digital form. So it's quite orderly for all our students to sort of, when they're studying a subject, they can see what the lecture notes are, what the tutorials are, what the labs are, and there might be video clips and other things to go with it. And the system we use is Canvas, and it's a really state-of-the-art sort of learning management system. It's cloud-enabled, which means that the students can use their mobile devices. So it's ideal for remote learning like that. And we had to make sure that all our students could follow the lectures, the tutorials, and some of our students were actually offshore. So we couldn't necessarily, with different time zones, so we couldn't necessarily do everything live. So we did a lot of recordings and put that up onto the learning management system, and that way the students could sort of continue their learning and not be interrupted.
Apart from the system that related to the online learning, any things that's like to be considered in relation to the adaptation and transition?
So, really, if you like, our lectures, which we had, the typical sort of maybe 1 hour lectures, they were sort of broken up into sort of 5 to 7 minute little YouTube parts, so like modules. So they were more bite size for these students, a better engagement, and that was typically recorded. And then when it came to tutorials, we did some of those live, and some of those were sort of recorded, but using Zoom and MS Teams.
How about the decision-making process? Is it like going to be tough with all these online settings?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the areas was around assessment for the students and student feedback. So assessment, we made a decision along with Swinburne Melbourne that there'd be no examinations in semester 1, and would have all continuous assessment and project work near the end as a capstone sort of project to be assessed like that. So that's the way we sort of changed the assessment kind of there.
Challenges for the management.
But we had a lot of feedback from the students, and we continually sort of adapted and got better at that. And we had surveys early on for the students to see which bits they were doing well in, which bits they were struggling, and with that feedback we were able to sort of quickly change. And we found some subjects were being taught really, really well. Other ones, there was feedback which was a little bit negative, and then we made the changes. So by the end of the semester, the students actually coped well. They actually did better in 2020 than they did in 2019, which for us is a hallmark that they did survive.
Baiklah, kita akan kembali semula selepas ini. Kita kembali semula bersama Prof John Wilson. Okay, Prof. In your opinion, with the health and safety protocols, what are the things that becoming more relevant and irrelevant now?
Sure. Look, I think as COVID-19 is still obviously around in the community, and so we have a lot of standard operating procedures within the university there. But probably the most important ones are wearing the face mask, social distancing. We have temperatures taken, so everyone who comes in must have their temperature taken. And if you're not well or you've got a temperature, just don't come to work, whether you're a student or a staff member. So,
what are the implications of all this?
So what we're doing now, because as the movement control order sort of relaxes a little bit, we're allowed some students back on campus. So, we've got some small class teaching happening with our first year students, but we're still in the majority online, but we have allowed for some small class tutorials, some laboratory work. But it means, every time we have a small class tutorial or a laboratory work which is face-to-face, all students, all staff, wearing masks, after it's finished, we've got to thoroughly clean that room, so make it COVID safe. And then, we have a number of rooms which we call COVID rooms for teaching in. So that safety is just paramount for us, because we certainly don't want any cases on campus of COVID-19.
So we would like to know about the long-term plans that most higher educations have at the management level. Any direct implication to the employees, specifically to the academic staff and admin staff?
Yeah, look, I think all universities right now are quite financially challenged. I think it's probably like a lot of businesses around the world are financially challenged during COVID-19, and universities are no different. We had a lot of our domestic students a little bit concerned about studying online to start with. There's a little bit of anxiety. Now, it was just a perception that online was much harder. when they actually started, they actually enjoyed it, right? And the feedback we got was good from the students. But out in the community, there was a little bit of hesitancy about studying online. So that was the domestic students. And then the international students, of course. Right now we can't have new international students coming into Sarawak because our borders are closed. So that means those students, if they're going to start, they've got to start in country online. So we've been trying to find ways to make that happen in a good way, so that their studies are not disrupted too much.
Okay, Prof. Any support that you think that would help to smoothen the transition from the ecosystem, maybe from the government or the parents?
Sure. Look, I think right now the emphasis is on safety for public health safety for COVID-19, and that's just the right approach. But as the world gets better, and let's hope there's going to be a vaccine shortly where we can actually get it removed, move to a little bit more normality. But I think from a government perspective, we would really encourage, when it's safe, for the borders to be reopened for international students. We can still do quarantine at scale, but I sort of understand why with tourists you don't want tourists coming in, because if they're coming here for a week and they've got to quarantine for 2 weeks, that doesn't make sense. But if a student's coming here to study for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 2 weeks quarantine's not much. So we could be doing something like that. And one area we're working with the state government is around trying to promote Sarawak as a destination for higher education. So that's for Swinburne, for UniMass, for UCTS, for Curtin. And we want the Sarawak tourism to not only promote the wonderful natural fauna and flora we have in Borneo here, but also to say, look, actually, we've got some wonderful and good value higher education for international students here. Kuching's a lovely, safe city. It's very affordable, and it's got a lovely, diverse and inclusive community. So we think it's a wonderful place for international students. But for a lot of international students, they don't know much about Borneo and Sarawak. So we feel, if we had a push for Study Sarawak, where we really promoted higher education along with tourism, that will be a really good education tourism. But they can study here for not only, maybe it's a 6 months or a semester study abroad, but it could be doing the whole degree here. And we think that's, it's a hidden gem. Sarawak is a hidden gem. So we're really trying to work with the state government to really try and promote that as a wonderful opportunity. And that's in the years to come. So that's sort of in the shorter term, medium term. And we would love that to happen, because we know in other countries, higher education becomes a wonderful export industry. And for every student that is studying in these universities, there are other jobs created not only on campus, but elsewhere, in the restaurants, the accommodation, transport. The whole economy benefits from that. It's probably got a job multiplier of 2 to 3 times of what you get in the university, and probably an economic multiplier of that as well for international students. So we think that's a wonderful opportunity there.
What are the future employers should or can expect from our graduates after these changes, maybe from these post-pandemic batches?
Sure. I think one thing that COVID-19 has sort of demonstrated for our students is they can cope with disruption, right? And I think employers are, the whole future of work is changing, and maybe we can touch on that shortly. But with all the changes that are happening, all our students have to be, when they graduate now, have to be quite agile and able to adapt quickly and keep learning. During the pandemic, suddenly going from in class on campus to in home online, that's a big disruption. So it sort of demonstrates to for our students, it sort of demonstrates that they can cope with disruption, in this case due to a pandemic, and yes, they can operate in a digital world, because the future of work is going to be a lot more digital. So this is a great example for our students, so that they can tell a future employer, yes, we sort of had this COVID-19 pandemic back in 2020, and we coped very, very well, and we went from this to this, and we kept kept our studies progressing. So that resilience, the grit, and the digital literacy is really, really important as a 21st century skill set. And I think those our students will be able to demonstrate that to future employers.
That means we can expect these batches, the post-pandemic batches, is even better in terms of their agility, in terms of their...
I think they'll have some confidence around what they've done there. And, you know, what I was saying before about, you know, some of the students were a little bit hesitant about going to study online. But actually, like a lot of things in life, you might have some perceptions this is going to be really hard. But then you actually do it and you find you're well supported. And yes, you can cope. You can think your way through this. You can do a bit of self-learning as well, which is needed. So, you know, there's some great lessons learned for our students and for our graduates, which we hope will take them through into the workforce with, you know, good skills, but also with grounded confidence that they can adapt to different changing circumstances. Because, you know, in the business world, you're always dealing with change, responding to opportunity and trying to position yourself the best way forward.
Sungguh menarik perkongsian yang telah diberikan. Kita kembali selepas ini bersama Profesor John Wilson untuk kupasan yang lebih lanjut. Kembali semula bersama Prof. John Wilson. Okay, Prof. So we are saying that university and colleges are still relevant in preparing students for the job market?
Oh gosh, yes. No, I always think about education as a pipeline of education. You think primary education, secondary education, then tertiary, and that's what universities do, you know, the tertiary education part. And then the next part's in the workforce. There's a whole lot of continuous learning that's got to be done. So, you know, all our students when they graduate must have that idea that they've got to keep learning, and because the world is changing, you must keep your skills up to date. But for us, that tertiary education is very grounding, because that's where we create what we call the T professional. If I can just talk about that for a moment. But we want all our graduates to come out with a T professional. You might say, well, John, what are you talking about as a T professional, right? So this vertical part is like the discipline strength, your problem solving ability, your critical thinking, but your expertise in your discipline, right? This horizontal part here is more your social skills, communication. Can you collaborate with others, right? And you need both in the workforce. So that's what we want our graduates to come out with. But we also want our graduates to be underpinned with grounded self-confidence, that curiosity to keep learning, that grit and endurance to be able to sort of fight their way through different situations, and to have that growth mindset so that they want to keep learning. They're not closed, but they're open to ideas and they want to explore those ideas. So that's what we want. So we want our graduates to have that great personal attributes of self-belief, but then have the skills of a T professional. And we know that if they've got those T professional skills, they'll do very, very well in the 21st century workforce.
So it is about everybody have different roles now. We are, you know, responding to the changes. University, colleges, students, and everybody in the ecosystem is, you know, working together. And changing. And, you know, the world of work is changing, because before COVID-19, the things we were talking about was digital disruption. We were talking about, you know, Industrial Revolution 4.0, you know, where the physical and cyber world sort of converge into almost into one system like that. And, you know, with that, you think of robotics, you think of artificial intelligence, you think of big data, data analytics, you know, Internet of Things. It goes on, smart infrastructure, smart health. But all of that is demonstrating that any graduate in the workforce has got to keep those skills up, because the things are changing very, very quickly. And just as sort of manual, repetitive jobs have been replaced with machinery, the same thing with repetitive, you know, thinking or cognitive jobs. They're being replaced as well, and replaced by, you know, machine learning and other things like that. So I think as long as our graduates stay agile, they have skills which are, you know, a little bit more bespoke, and probably involve social and empathy as well. A great future for all our graduates. So I'm a firm believer
that the university education is an absolute must for any developed nation. If you haven't got that, you must be able to invest in the social capital of your people, and universities just do that in terms of education and research.
We look forward for all these positive outcomes. Okay, Prof. While the possible vaccine is far from inception, we understand that some students might be unable to fully benefit from these online resources. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question, that one. We believe with the what we have around online education is really we have a lot of support in place for those students. So all the students have to do is actually call out having difficulties in this area, and they will get additional help. And I think with the as the restrictions have been easing, as we get students back to campus and we allowed some more small class teaching, we can provide extra support for the students. But we sort of know that when we went in-home and online, for some students, their study areas at home weren't really brilliant. Their Wi-Fi mightn't have been very, very good, or their devices they were operating off, they might have even had a computer at home. So we know that was pretty challenging. But now that the students can sort of start to come back to campus, they can use the facilities. They've got good Wi-Fi. You can use the computers in the library and other places like that, and there's extra support on campus. I think those things will be, although we're still online, with all these additional supports, that will make it much, much easier for the students.
It's just facilitating the social distancing via the online learning method with the platform.
Yeah, exactly.
But we are still giving all the infrastructure, and the facilities to the students.
All there. So the students can still use those, but of course, the whole premise of safety for the students, safety for the staff, and the whole of the community is all about those standard operating procedures, temperatures being taken, social distancing, wearing masks, washing hands, all those things.
Okay, Prof, any concluding remark from you regarding this roles of higher education institution?
Sure. Around higher education, higher education's got a massive role to play, as I said before, with any developing and developed nation, right? It's the backbone of a nation to invest in your people, to really skill them up, and that's what's needed in the 21st century. COVID-19 in some ways has accelerated the digital disruption, and then it's sort of highlighted that if you've got a lot of paper-based systems in your company or your university, you've got to do more digital, because that's one thing we did find was quite disruptive. So in a lot of ways, I think COVID-19 has provided a bit of a wake-up call to everybody that digital disruption is happening. It just accelerated during COVID-19. But I come back to what I was saying before about the wider issues happening with the future of work. The pandemic's one part, but in a lot of ways, it's just accelerated those changes. But when you talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0 and the changing nature of work into the future, I go back to my tea professional. You need to have that tea professional skills there, and every graduate must have that attitude. I've got to keep learning, continuously learn, keep upskilling, because the world is changing. The world's demand for skills are changing, and if you don't change, you'll get left behind. So the message is, be confident. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but the opportunity comes if you're prepared, and to be prepared, you've got to keep upskilling. So I'm very positive and upbeat. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof, for being with us today. Banyak yang dipelajari daripada temu bual bersama Prof John Wilson, Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif dan Timbalan Naib Canselor Swinburne University of Technology, Kuching, Sarawak. Antaranya adalah keperluan menambah ilmu dalam pembelajaran atas talian, perubahan ke arah yang lebih baik, efisien dan kompetitif. Anda akan bersama lagi dengan kami di VISI. Bersama saya, Dr. Aila Abdul Latif. Sekian, terima kasih.